It was a rainy Thursday morning, the kind of rain that felt like the sky was weeping alongside those who came to mourn. Richard Graham, a man known to the world for his billions, steel empire and cold precision, stood alone beneath a black umbrella at the grave of his only son, Jacob. It had been 1 year to the day since the car crash that took Jacob's life. The cemetery was empty, just rows of gray stones and wet earth, until he saw her. A girl no older than 16, barefoot and soaked to the bone, sat curled up by Jacob's grave like a forgotten statue. Her clothes were ragged, her hair matted, and her thin arms were wrapped around her knees. She wasn't crying. She was just staring at the headstone with an intensity that made Richard stop in his tracks. Who was she? Richard had made peace with silence, but this girl disrupted it in a way that made his grief feel unfamiliar again. He approached slowly, expecting her to run off like most homeless did when approached. But she didn't move. She looked up at him with the sharp, exhausted eyes of someone who had lived too much life in too little time. "This is my son's grave," Richard said flatly, half expecting her to offer a lie or run away. "I know," she whispered, her voice rasping like dry leaves in the wind. "I've been visiting him for months." Richard's brow furrowed. "You knew Jacob?" The girl nodded slowly, then reached into the folds of her torn jacket and pulled out a small, faded photograph. Richard took it and froze. It was Jacob. But not in any of the usual staged family photos. This one was candid. Jacob was smiling, holding a guitar, sitting beside the same girl now in front of him. "He taught me how to play," she said, voice trembling. "On Wednesdays at the shelter downtown." Richard's heart thudded. Jacob had never told him about volunteer work. He barely spoke to his father about anything that wasn't superficial. The billionaire had known about his son's hobbies, but this was something else. Something real. "Why didn't you come to the funeral?" "I tried," she whispered, "but I didn't belong there. People like me, we don't belong in places with chandeliers and champagne grief." He was stunned by her words, by the raw truth in them. He looked around. The cemetery was still silent, the rain still falling in soft sheets. Richard had spent the last year burying his emotions under layers of business, investments, and appearances. But here, in front of his son's grave, a stranger was peeling them away with each word. He crouched down beside her, for the first time in years feeling like a father again. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Maya." The name hit him like a whisper of fate. Jacob had once mentioned the name in passing. But Richard had never asked more. That's when Maya looked him dead in the eyes and said, "There's something I need to tell you. It's about Jacob. And me." Richard's breath caught in his throat. Richard didn't speak. Couldn't. He watched Maya's lips tremble, her fingers clutching the edge of her coat like it was the only thing holding her together. "I didn't just know Jacob," she said, her voice barely above the sound of raindrops hitting the stone. "I loved him." The air between them seemed to thicken.